What's up, YouTube? January 8th, 2023. Okay, so I already know the answer to the question I searched on Google here. I've been showing that I do know the answer to that since the start of my channel, but now I'm going to give my ultimate refutation, I would say, to the Bible. My current ultimate refutation to the Bible and to major world religions, because they say that the soul exists in the body, even though they say that the soul is not physical. I've already given mountains of evidence that that's impossible and that makes no sense. However, regardless, I did say in the earliest parts of my channel that I'm going to give the Bible and major world religions the benefit of the doubt as far as some of their notions of the soul. And then I'm going to do that and give them a lot of benefits of the doubt, many benefits of the doubt many times, and still see how, and still just give it my best to see how it fares, how it conflicts and fares against the things I came up with. And it still managed many times throughout the course of my channel to show that the Bible and major world religions are wrong about a number of things about the soul. Okay. So, yeah. So ultimately, in my last video, on this channel, the one just most prior to this one, which I released yesterday, I actually did give an explanation of what I mean when I say that I was wrong when I gave the benefit of the doubt. I was actually wrong to have actually consistently given the benefit of the doubt for as long as I did to major world religions about so many things. You can never underestimate people enough, because people are just so stupid, okay? As I've been saying for so long anyway, but still. Regardless, I stupidly decided to give them the benefit of the doubt with this idea that because here's the thing, all the Christians, all the major world religions, they say the senses are physical things, but that contradicts the notion of the soul of their religion. Their religion says the soul is not physical, yet it also says that the soul uses the senses. So how can the soul use the senses if they're physical, if the soul is not a physical thing? So something's wrong here. Either the soul is physical to be able to use the senses, or it is not physical and it's using the senses anyway, which is a paradox, or the actual thing that I was talking about in my last video. This is the one explanation that makes the most sense, and that's that that's actually not what it is. It's actually that the senses are not physical at all. Atoms do not produce the senses at all. And I gave the evidence last video, in case you're wondering. So that's why this is all so confusing, because we've been brainwashed to believe since the very first civilization of the universe, of all the civilizations in the universe, of our universe in existence. There've been, so many stupid ideas about consciousness and atoms and the senses. They've really been making it hard to tell what how exactly they're related as far as the sense when you bring physical senses into the picture, because physical senses are not they're not actually physical. They're just called physical senses because people think that they're actually made of atoms. They actually think the senses are made of atoms, and yet say the soul can use atoms, even though it's not made of atoms. And I talked about this a long time ago on this channel at various points throughout the course of my channel, about how if that really did happen, it'd have to be a paradox, for it to actually be that, you know, the soul is physical in that it's using physical senses, you know, or that it's using physical senses without being physical anyway, which would just be an even more absurd paradox. But given back in the times when I was arguing for that, you have to remember, I even clarified when I was arguing for that was at a time when I was arguing on this channel that God can make any paradox happen. You can go back to those videos, and you'll see. You can go back as many videos as you want. You can see the entire course of the channel. It's all there. That's why I left it all there, so you can see that. That's what I had believed. That's what I've been arguing at the time. That it's actually God is paradoxical, but not only is he paradoxical, he can make any paradox happen, and that any paradox can happen. And so God could actually make the paradox happen of the soul not being physical, but still doing physical things. Or, see, the problem really is the only reason the problem starts here is when you start to assume that senses are physical. You know, it all starts with the senses. To figure all this out, you have to start with the senses. And I'm telling you right now, the senses are not physical things. They're external to what is physical, which is atoms. They're external to atoms. And I gave the evidence last video. Atoms cannot produce the senses. I did argue something similar to that a really long time ago on this channel, that atoms cannot produce like certain elements and stuff in certain structures. At least not on their own, they can't do it. Which is similar, but it's not exactly the same thing, because I still went ahead and gave them the benefit of the doubt and said, hey, no. Atoms actually can produce the senses. You know, how are the senses going to be made of atoms? It doesn't even make sense. Atoms cannot comprehend atoms because atoms cannot sense atoms. They have I know that they have texture, they have a scent, they have a shape and size, they have geometrical dimensions, but that doesn't mean they have senses, and that doesn't mean, I mean, they have senses, but that doesn't mean they create senses. They can't create senses, but you can have something that you didn't create. They have the senses. That's why humans are made of atoms and we have senses, because of our body, but it's not our body producing our senses. It's just our senses are something external to us, external to our body. That's also why I have been arguing, this is perfectly fine as this, when you think about it. I kind of didn't make a big mistake here anyway, because when you look back on the channel, I even argued months ago that consciousness, or the soul, could not possibly exist inside of space anyway. So even if the senses were produced by atoms, which would make no sense, it would be absurd, of course. That's why I have been resorting to saying that if that the soul cannot exist within any location, if by the logic of what they're saying, and if I'm also giving the benefit of the doubt, like if the soul cannot use this, if the soul can use the senses outside of the body, and that makes sense, then that's one thing. But it's not like the body can't use the senses is the thing. The body can't actually. The body can use the senses, but it doesn't create the senses it's using. And the consciousness that we have consciousness is the senses. The soul is the senses. The physical senses are not external to the soul. Is the ultimate reality of it. And our thoughts are produced by our senses. They've mixed all of this up, and put so many things in the wrong order, and put so many things backwards. That's just literally just the things I said in the last video alone are supporting what I was just saying earlier. What I just said, that again, I mean, literally, like, if the senses are not produced by the body, then what are they produced by? Because then they must be produced, and they're not produced by atoms. They're not produced by the body, but the body still uses them. Well, then that's just that's, I can see, as I've explained, I've given the reasons why that can be extremely confusing, and always has been for the entire world. But this is the revelation I've given finally. This is the revelation right here. I mean, I just gave the evidence last video, but now I'm giving a better explanation. Last video was a vague overview of what I just said. Again, yeah, I mean, just because the soul has senses doesn't mean that the soul is physical, because the senses aren't because their problem with, major world religion's problem is assuming that the senses are physical. My problem was also assuming that the senses are physical, but when they said the senses are physical, they still went on to say that the soul can use the senses, whereas I did not say that the soul can use the senses. So that's the problem. However, so they got me there. However, the only problem is they still mess it up, because then they just say that the soul can exist inside of the world, and it can exist inside of locations when it can't. I mean, how if a thing isn't physical, it cannot be put inside of a physical location. So that's just the problem. So that's why I was confused about what they were saying, because they were contradicting their own logic. But that's why it's not a good idea to give the benefit of the doubt to a source of information that is contradicting its own claims and logic on the regular, which is what these major world religions do as far as consciousness, the theory of consciousness goes. So I have to admit, I was wrong about that, but now that we got that squared away, I can finally see and put forth you also got to remember, as I've explained last video and many videos before it, the other reason why I let it get to that point is because I really just, like I've said many times and shown many times, I just have my own personal life. I'm a human being. I have my own personal issues. I can't afford to just keep putting all the thought I have into just, I can't put all my eggs in one basket. I didn't want to keep thinking so deeply about all these things all day, every day. Obviously not. Nobody would. So now here I am, and you can look at the first video to now, see how much time it took. But that's still very impressive compared to all of history. I mean, in all of history, they couldn't do what I just did in the span of a year and a half for the duration of this entire channel. So just goes to show that if you're still doubting that I'm legitimate, well, then how do you explain what I just said? Or all the stuff that I've just, explained, all the things I came up with on this channel, and all the things I've mentioned, it's so many things. So, but I don't expect you to believe